Well, thank you, Pat and Walter. It's truly a pleasure to have an opportunity. And just to remind everyone again, it's extremely important that during these times that we're in, we're still in the midst of contending with COVID, and supporting small businesses and independent bookstores is very, very important at these times. Normally, Pat and Walter do countless events in person. We've come up with this idea and concept to do these virtually, and they've been quite successful, but it's quite different than being able to engage with people in person. So without further ado, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Dave Parker. Dave is a former National League Most Valuable Player, two-time batting champion. He played 19 seasons in the major leagues, was in 7 All-Star games, won 3 Gold Gloves, and 3 Silver Slugger Awards. He was a 1979 All-Star MVP, played on 2 World Championship teams, and was the first $1 million-plus baseball player. Dave lives in Ohio, where he has created the Dave Parker 39 Foundation, an organization focused on finding a cure for Parkinson's disease. Dave co-wrote the book with Dave Jordan, who is a writer and filmmaker living in New Jersey. He founded InStream Sports, the first athlete-author writing platform. He has written for The Sporting News, SB Nation, and Hardball Times, and he's a co-author with John DiAgostino of Fastball John. So first question, Dave. Coming up in the major leagues, big influence for you, I know, was Roberto Clemente. Can you share some memories and what it was like playing with the great Clemente?
Well, he was definitely the great one. He did everything extremely well: defense, offense, hit for power, hit for average. He was a typical 5-tool player and was very good to me.
When his untimely passing came upon everyone, which obviously rocked not only the baseball world, but baseball in general, what type of an impact did that have on the Pirates team to basically have to adapt to the loss of such a legend, such a leader? And I know that Willie Stargell was important early on, but can you describe what some of that was like for you as a very young player and that impact?
Well, it definitely hurt me because I had an opportunity to be with Roberto at spring training and got to know him man to man. So it had a real bad effect on me. I felt very sad for a couple of weeks, and Roberto left his legacy, and that was known as an outstanding player and even a greater individual.
If you could share a little bit about how players like the great Willie Stargell and the great Doc Ellis, what impact they had on you in terms of mentoring you as a young ball player?
Well, they took me on the wing right away. Doc was probably one of my closest friends. Stargell was a universal personality. All you had to do was follow him around, and you know what it takes to be a big leaguer. So all those guys were very instrumental to me as a player.
How was it the early support and affection of General Manager Joe Brown and longtime manager Danny Murtaugh gave to the players? How was that, and how did you handle that?
Well, Joe Brown was general manager and president of the team, I believe. But he was the guy that put the best 9 out there. It didn't make any difference were they Latin American, black, white, whatever. I mean, he really believed in playing his personnel and sometimes playing out of the box and what people would consider out of the box.
How did Willie Stargell get the nickname Pops?
Well, I might have played some part of that. You know, he was getting old, and I was coming on the scene as a young player, and it just was appropriate to call him Pops because he represented that.
So with that Pops nickname, and brings back a lot of memories of that 1979 World Series team. What was the origins behind "We Are Family," and how did that become the theme song and the rallying cry for the Pirates at that time?
It started with us being in a rain delay, and Stargell, Jacoby, and myself was sitting in the dugout just watching it rain because we wasn't going to play. And Willie asked Jacoby, did he like that song that was on the system that we had? And Jacoby said, yeah, I like that song. Stargell said, good, because that's going to be our theme song for the rest of the year. And we played it and lived by it for the rest of the year. And it ended up being a very good song for us because we won the World Series.
Yeah, and if memory serves, you had kind of a preference to McFadden and Whitehead's "Ain't No Stopping Us Now."
Right, that's the one that I wanted, but
Yeah.
what Willie wanted, Willie gets. And Willie wanted the Sister Sledge, I believe, song, and that's what we went with.
Yeah, and I also recall that particular World Series was one of the worst weather World Series in memory. I mean, didn't you have at least 2 rainouts, and most of the games were just played in some of the worst conditions?
Yeah, it was played in muddy field. It was an important hit. They had a man on at second base, and the ball was Eddie Murray hit a ball, and I went back on it and slipped and barely caught it in the pocket. And that was the field conditions was that bad. But Matlock told me, he said, if you had missed that ball, you could have kept running right on through the fence because you wouldn't have been able to get back in here.
So obviously, anyone that remembers from those days, Dave, movie star looks as a player. Had you ever thought about getting into acting?
No, not really.
Because you certainly could have been a leading man. I mean, the flair that you had for the game, very few have it. Is there anyone that you see today that reminds you? And I remember that trademark walk around the bases. You know, after you just hit one out against a top-notch pitcher. Is there anyone out there today that reminds you of your style of play and your flair of play of current day players?
Now, current day players are a little different than I were in my day. I was one of those guys that had a little flash, but not overly flashy. These guys do backflips down the first baseline, and they just approach it differently.
Absolutely. Talk a little bit about your rivalry with the Big Red Machine and how that transpired and what that was like as a Pirates player, and what it was like being on the Pirates side with some of those brutal games and series against Johnny Bench, Pete Rose, Davey Concepcion, and all the rest on Ken Griffey.
We didn't like those guys. The Pirates and the Reds was automatically hated each other. And coming to Cincinnati was kind of difficult because, you know, you're so close to Pennsylvania and people share teams that they cheered for. And me being a Pirate for all those years made it kind of hard to adjust to being a Red, but it worked out. I ended up having 4 incredible years in Cincinnati.
You sure did. Um, so let's talk a little bit about the transition over to Cincinnati, because when you made the transition there, ultimately the Reds retired your number. You're considered a Reds immortal. How did you like playing in Cincinnati? And obviously that's where you're from, but obviously there was some trepidation at first making that transition. But if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Well, it was just going over and adjusting to playing with Pete Rose than against him. And I got in a position where I had some good young talent that was there as well. So the adjustment was relatively easy, especially when you had Pete Rose managing the club.
So you've had a pretty strong, solid working relationship with Pete Rose and ultimate respect on both parts. Talk a little bit about Pete Rose, what your thoughts are. Do you think Pete deserves to be in the Hall of Fame?
I think that you should be dealt with on, what you did on the field. And Pete did a lot. He's a hit king, for God's sake. So,
He sure is.
He's a guy that was easy to play for and to play with. So Pete it was good to have him around, because it made my adjustment that much easier.
What was it like playing for controversial Reds owner Marge Schott?
Well, it was different. Marge was a product of her environment, and she would say things that was a little off kilter, and it made it very interesting and hard to play for.
Yeah, sure did. Sure did. So, toughest pitchers that you faced, and guys that you kind of owned as pitchers. Who comes to mind?
Well, Steve Carlton was by far the toughest pitcher that I faced. He was also a pitcher that I struck out mostly against, and I hit more home runs off of him than anybody I had faced. So it was a feast or famine with them. The guy that I hit probably the best was Andy Hawkins, big right-hander, about 6'6", fastball pitcher. And I had good success off him.
What do you remember about Rich Goose Gossage? And I mean, at the time, it was a controversial deal that the Pirates let him get away. But was he wild from what you remember, or was he the dominant, intimidating pitcher that he became later?
Well, he was dominant because he had a mid-90 fastball and it had movement, and he wasn't comfortable to stand in the box against because he had a tendency to be a little wild. So he kept you loose in the batter's box, and he threw hard enough to be the stopper that he ended up being.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, Dave, because if you look at today, these guys that come in as specialists, they'll come in, face a couple of batters, get the save, the setup. I mean, back then, you had guys coming in like a Gossage that would pitch 2, sometimes 3 innings to get a save. Different game today, obviously.
Yeah, guys pitched the last 5 innings instead of thinking in terms of lasting the whole game. So it's a different animal when it comes to relief pitching and pitchers that are considered stoppers. They're usually hard throwers and have an out pitch, and that's usually a breaking ball.
Tell us a little bit about your first All-Star game in 1977 at Yankee Stadium.
Well, I was excited, being my first. I think I scored on a single or a double. It depends on what they gave me. But it was exciting, a thrill. The first one is always a thrill, and the second one was even nicer.
Yeah, I guess it was in '79 that you made that unbelievable throw from the warning track. Was it Jim Rice that you threw out at the plate? I don't recall, but I mean, to this day, it's one of the most. They use that highlight when ever they show the All-Star game. You had one of the strongest and most precise arms I've ever seen. Um, but tell me a little bit about that. Was that Jim Rice you threw out at the plate?
I threw out Jim Rice at third base. He was thrown out at third, and I threw out Brian Downing at home to keep us in front. So that was the first time they issued MVP for defensive efforts. So I was proud of that throw. And when people see me, the first thing they bring up is that throw. All the hitting I did, they basically talk about that throw.
How did you get the nickname Cobra? I mean, it fits perfectly, but how did you get that nickname?
My trainer, Tony Borderon, was a big fight fan. And I'm from Cincinnati, and Ezra Charles was a great champion here, heavyweight champion here in Cincinnati. And they was talking about me being from Cincinnati and being called the Cincinnati Cobra, like Ezra Charles were. And that's how it got started. And Bob Prince made it famous.
So you made the transition over to Oakland and to play with Ricky Henderson, the Bash brothers there, and then you you helped fill out that lineup. Share some memories of those teams, because I've heard some Ricky stories over the years that he didn't remember a lot of teammates' names. That he had trouble remembering teammates. What was it like playing with Ricky? Ricky's one of a kind.
Ricky was the best leadoff hitter in the history of baseball.
Yeah.
And all he had to remember was how to get around the bases without missing any and be the RBI man that he was. Ricky was #1 leadoff hitter, RBI, #1 RBI guy. He was just nothing you could say negative about Ricky, because Ricky carried the whole package.
Yeah, and single-handedly can take the game into his own hands and turn it on its ear. If the team is down, steal first, steal second, steal third, steal home. And I mean, just the distraction that caused for the pitcher. Also, they weren't focusing on the batter, and just that in and of itself, there was nobody like him. How about the other guys on that team? The Bash brothers, Canseco and McGuire. What was it like playing with those guys?
It was great to play with them. They were young talent, just waiting to get to the major leagues and tear it up. Because we had Ricky led off, Connie Langsford hit second, Canseco hit third, I hit fourth, McGuire hit fifth, Dave Henderson hit sixth, Steinbach hit seventh, Tony Phillips hit eighth, and Walt Weiss hit ninth. That's an all-star team. And,
it sure is.
I ever played on.
Which was more gratifying to you, and which do you favor in terms of your memories? The championship with Oakland or the championship with the Pirates in '79?
Well, the Pirates was the first, so that's the one that I hold closest to my heart. Oakland just had so much talent, just a matter of putting guys out there that was going to stay healthy and take advantage of the opposition.
So you mentored a lot of players along the way that to this day still talk fondly about that. Some of those being guys like Barry Larkin, and as I mentioned to you, my friend who was broadcasting the Yankee game a short while ago, Paul O'Neill. Talk a little bit about that, because as you became a more seasoned player, guys look to you for leadership and for guidance. And, there's the funny story in the MLB documentary, which I really encourage everyone to watch, about Dave, about Gary Sheffield. So you talk a little bit of memories about mentoring some of these young guys and showing them the ropes on their way up. That would really be enlightening.
Well, I just tried to teach them what it takes to be a major leaguer. You don't come in and not play because you got an upset stomach. You got an obligation to your teammates, and an upset stomach won't do. What to do in certain situations, hit behind the runner, take advantage of an extra base. Just teach them the fundamentals of what it takes to be a good major leaguer was what I was teaching.
Who was your idols growing up, Dave?
Frank Robinson, Vader Pinson.
Yeah, talk a little bit about Frank Robinson, someone that most of us have the utmost respect for, but what an unbelievable player he was, what an unbelievable man he was, and a pioneer that he was. So if you could share a little bit more about that, because that'll lead into my next question, which is with regards to facing racism while in the major leagues. So if you can elaborate on those 2 points.
Well, Frank was definitely a player that was worth calling your idol. He was a tremendous wrist hitter, tremendous base runner. They said he was an old 30, and that was a mistake because he went Triple Crown American League. So Frank was one of the most devastating offensive players that I've been around. And he did a lot of firsts too. And some of that is pertaining to what you're going to talk about. He took on, being a first in the front office, managing and hitting.
True
So Frank
pioneer.
True pioneer. That's well put.
True pioneer. Yeah. I mean, I had a chance to talk to Dusty Baker, and I mean, some of the doors that are being slowly opened now, it's because of the work behind the scenes that people like Frank Robinson had done. So you could talk a little bit about some of the racism along the way, Dave, that you had to contend with as a young player and throughout your career.
Well, a lot of it took place in the South. Rocky Mount, North Carolina, Spartanburg, cities like that. You had stuff yelled at the stands, but basically you just try to let that go over your head and apply yourself and make your mark as a player.
Different times than today, for sure. And I know that none of that was easy. I'm going to turn the next question over to my son, who one of the things that I feel is very important is to pass on this wisdom to the next generation, because as we all have seen, our beloved sport is losing the interest of the younger generation. So trying to encourage my sons to have an active interest. So I'm going to let him ask the next question. So here he is.
Hi, Dave. Big fan.
How you doing? It's a nice shirt you got on.
Appreciate it. Swear it's been seen somewhere. So I know about all the famous people you got to know in the 70s, and I was just wondering, what was it like having a friendship with Muhammad Ali?
Well, Ali was the greatest, and knowing him was a great thing to achieve. He was a political guy, as you may well know, and he actually gave up his title because of his beliefs. So Ali was a great guy to know.
Well said.
Dave, so what's your favorite memory or the accomplishment that you're most proud of from your career?
Well, that would be something that I shared jointly, and that would be with the baseball teams that I played for. The Pirates winning the World Series was something that you can enjoy collectively as a unit. And those are awards that I thought most of. And Oakland was a great achievement because I came to them and they was 500 the year before I got there, and they ended up winning 102 games after I got there. So that sticks out as one of my pride and joys.
So, Dave, looking at today's game and some of the changes that have been made, I just watched the conclusion of the Yankee game, and they lost with a guy starting out in second base to start the 10th inning. And, you know, they don't have a universal DH. As someone that's one of the elder statesmen and one of the most respected players in the game, what are your thoughts about the game today and these changes that have been made and the things that they're doing today to try and speed the game up and in general?
Well, one thing that they reflect to me is that they're not fundamentally sound. You know, they don't move the man over like we used to. We don't put emphasis on hitting the ball behind the runner, hitting the fly ball when you need a sacrifice fly. All those things come into play, and it makes baseball different today than what it was in the 70s and early 80s.
It sure does. It sure does. So, Dave, if you could share a little bit about your foundation, I'm sure people would like to learn more. I know I would. So, if you could share a little bit more about that, that would be wonderful.
Well, there's 39 foundation, and we do things as far as raising money for Parkinson, and something that I'm putting emphasis in because I got it, and I like to be known as the one that helped find the cure. Parkinson's is something that you deal with day in, day out, and it's just something that I deal with on a day in, day out basis.
Well, we'll share with everyone again the information with regards to Dave's foundation, the fundraiser information with regards to that. And one thing personally I want to say is I think it's a travesty that you're not in the Baseball Hall of Fame, Dave. I mean, you squarely belong there. And if you look at the numbers comparatively to players that have gotten in, you should be in already, in my opinion.
Well, thank you. That's very nice.
Oh,
One thing about it, I'm not in, but I dominated everything that I participated in. As an outfielder, as an offensive player, I did it all at an above average clip. So I've done all I can do as far as the Hall of Fame. Now it's up to the committee or somebody going in and making a good case for me.
well, we're gonna try and do just that. Is make a good case because it's certainly deserving, based around your accomplishments and as an ambassador for the game, and you absolutely belong there and should be there. So that's my personal opinion, and you know, I'll do what I can to make sure that we spread the word, as I hope everyone else on this call will, because Dave has led an unbelievable career. One of the top players, and in most instances, again, if you haven't seen the MLB documentary, Dave's contemporaries, most of which are in the Hall of Fame, have stated that without question, Dave was the most dominant player and best player of the 1980s and 90s. So he deserves his place in Cooperstown. And with that, we're going to conclude. I want to show the book. It's not showing up here. I need my son to hold it up behind me. But this is the book. Austin? All right, we're having a little bit of trouble with that.
Sorry, technical difficulties.
But the name of the book is Cobra. I think there you can see it. And it is a extensive book covering all areas of Dave's career and life. And we encourage everyone to pick up a copy. If you want to, it makes a great gift. You can pick it up from Bookends for anyone that listens to the recording of this later, bookends.com. And again, Dave, it's been an absolute honor and pleasure. Thank you also, DJ, for—
Yeah, you bet, May. My pleasure. Thank you so much for creating this forum for us.
Absolutely. I look forward to doing it again. And Dave, look forward to seeing you in person. Blessings to you and good health. And thanks to everyone for taking part this evening. I'll turn it over
guys,
to you.
Thank you for having me.
On behalf of Bookends and all the fans out there, Greg, thanks again for a great job. And Dave, thank you for really adding a lot to the sport and the book. And we really look forward to pushing the book and making sure that everybody gets a read. It could be a great Father's Day gift also. We do have some extra copies at the store. So as Greg mentioned, please feel free to give us a call if you need a couple. But good luck on the rest of the tour, guys, and appreciate you pulling this all together. Have a great evening. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Walter. Bye, Pat.